Hi, everybody. This is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and we are now starting our free live Zoom class that is specially for members of my free Facebook group that is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. And so only people who are members of this free, but members only group have access to this link. So that's why they're able to join live. We are going to be posting this into the Facebook group so people can watch the replay later. And I always like to post videos onto YouTube as well, so that more people can have access to this material. Today's topic is, why does God or goddess, universe, divine creator, whatever word you have for that, why does God allow psychic attacks, curses, black magic, entity attacks, and all of that? Okay, so this is not an easy topic, but I see we have a lot of people who joined today because I think a lot of people have this question, like, why is this allowed? I want to be really clear that this is not an easy topic. I want to be totally transparent and say that a couple of days ago, I was sitting out in my yard, out in nature, and I was like, I had my notebook with me. I was getting ready to write down notes for the class. And I thought, oh, do I really want to talk about this? Because it's not pleasant. Okay. I mean, what we're going to talk about is not all like fluffy bunny. It's just not an easy topic, but it's important. And so we're going to talk about it. Okay. I don't claim to have the knowledge of God. So I am just going to share with you where I've come to personally and professionally with this question after wrestling with it for several years, because I've had this same big existential question. Why does God, goddess, universe allow these things to happen? I've had this same question for many years, and I've had some time to work through it. And so today, really, I'm just going to be sharing with you what I've come to. So it's going to be a bit of rambling in a few directions, just to get you thinking about some things. And like I said, I don't claim to personally know the mind of God. So this is just what I've come to. And then I encourage you to just take what I share today and use it to inform whatever clarity you end up coming to. Okay. Because there's no one right answer. I think there's no one right answer. And also I think the answer is different depending on like how long you've been wrestling with the question. I think the answer evolves over time. So just a couple of quick announcements, very quick, and then, oh dear, my computer wants to restart and we don't want that right now. A couple of quick announcements, and then we're going to get into our discussion. And since we are on Zoom, that also means that we'll have the chance to share. You can use the chat option at any point. You don't have to wait till I ask questions. You can share, and then when I have a chance, I'll go in and read the chat comments to the whole group. And probably we'll have time at the end if anyone wants to share or interact or engage with this question through verbal discourse. So the announcements. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, be sure to go to youtube.com and type in Psychic Protection Sanctuary, because there's a lot of videos on there. And then also, there's something that I have not announced yet, and I'll just mention it right now. I got a very strong intuitive hit a couple of days ago that I do need to make a change on the YouTube channel. Since 2016, there have been tons of free videos on there. Like, I don't know, there's like 100 hours or some crazy amount. And I love that. I love that we've had those free videos on there for a long time. I'm going to be removing or cutting a lot of those videos in half eventually, like within the next couple of weeks. And that if you want access to all of the videos, there will be a small little like $17 a month membership fee for people who want the whole library, Maya Zahira's video vault. So just giving you a little heads up. So if you want to spend the next 100 hours watching all the free videos, you can do that right now. Like, you can do that. But I wanted to give you a heads up on that shift. And then the only other thing I'll announce is that if you would like more information and you need more support, go to my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, and you can click on Work with Maya, and you can read about all the different options that there are. I don't know about you guys, but I like getting the announcements part out of the way. So then we know that's done. And now let's get into why we are here. You might be a note taker. This might be a good one to grab your journal, because you might have some of your own thoughts that come up as we talk about this. So again, our topic for today is, why does God, Goddess, universe, creator allow these things to happen? Why is psychic attack allowed to happen? Black magic, entity interference, dark forces interference, all the things, okay? So I kind of have a couple of different tracks that I'm going to go with this. Hang on, I need to take care of a little administrative thing. I want to read a comment that I thought was just a great comment from one of our members. I'm not going to say who it was, but just the comment, I think, is so valid. I think a lot of other people watching this may have the same or similar question or thought process. This person says, yes, this is a very good question. Why, when I called out to Jesus, Mary, and God, and I was a good Catholic and sought priestly help, did they not intervene to alert me to the demonic presence I was dealing with? Priests couldn't agree on what it was. There were no mystics in the church who could see it. So there's a very common belief, and I get a lot of comments even on my YouTube videos, people saying like, why do you have all these videos? Like, the answer is easy, just call on Jesus. Or, you know, fill in the blank with whatever religion, right? Just call on Jesus, or just do this spell or whatever, that'll fix it. Those of you who are in this group, a lot of you here are here because you tried those things, and unfortunately it didn't work. There are instances where calling on something powerful does work, but as we've seen, you know, we pray for intervention from whoever we perceive as our spiritual source, and then wonder, why was I not saved? Why was this still allowed to happen? I'm probably going to go back to the comments in a little bit. I want to go into my own track for a minute. So, like I mentioned before, there's going to be a couple of rambling tracks. This is not an easy subject. It's not concise. But I'm going to start with one particular track in which we're considering the cosmic laws, what a lot of people call the cosmic laws. And these are laws of how the universe and reality like how everything is allowed to exist, what is allowed. And there are a lot of beliefs in cosmic laws in a lot of New Age belief systems. But just because they are popular doesn't mean that they are true. Here's one cosmic law that a lot of people believe in. It's that nothing and no one can impose upon your free will unless you agree to it. So if you get attacked by an entity, that means that on some level you wanted it, you agreed to it. Now, those of us who've actually gone through those issues, you might feel the anger welling up within you when you hear me say that. And I feel angry because it's total victim shaming. I don't think the idea was originally intended to victim shame, but it ends up being utilized as victim shaming, as like, well, if you had an entity attack you or you suffered a major psychic attack due to someone sending you black magic, that obviously means that you agreed to it. Because this cosmic law that is absolute says that nothing can nothing can impose upon your free will. Well, I'm here to tell you that's just a popular belief. Just because something is a popular belief doesn't make it true. And even outside of spiritual warfare, horrible things that, now remember, I said this is not going to be a pleasant topic today, so trigger warning. Horrible things that have happened on the planet throughout history, horrible things that have happened to children. You know, thousands and thousands of people, starve like every minute on the planet. What's the actual number of people who starve to death? All these horrible things are allowed to happen. And especially when we think in terms of children, you can't tell me that was their free will, that they wanted that. I don't believe in that quote, cosmic law. I don't think it's correct. So regarding cosmic laws and like why these bad things are allowed to happen, like why when I call on the forces of good, they don't intervene, but then the forces of bad bludgeon me over the head and I get attacked by all this dark stuff. Why is that allowed to happen? So I'm going to read directly from a section of my second book, the Psychic Attack Sourcebook. And for those of you who have the paperback, this is page 187. Again, this is just one of the tracks that I'm going to go on. I'm going to go in a different track in just a little bit. And I did see there were some comments that came through as well. I'll read those in a minute. Okay, page 187 of the Psychic Attack Sourcebook. Why is this allowed to happen? Why is this kind of interference allowed to happen? Why are we not protected? Who is in charge on this planet anyway? These are a few of the troubling existential questions that may come up for those who consider these issues. I cannot say that I have the ultimate answer on all of this, but I can tell you what I have come to after years of searching for the answers. One thing I have observed in my multitude of client cases and in my own life is that agents of the dark forces, and I mean like any negative entities, people working for the dark forces, like any agents of the dark forces, seem to frequently get away with things that are against cosmic laws, or at least what we would think cosmic law should be. For example, we might believe that there is a law that prohibits entities from harming human souls, or that a human being's free will cannot be imposed upon. But how do we know those are actually cosmic laws and not just wishful thinking? In my observation, even if there are truly benevolent laws upholding our reality, it is obvious that the dark forces have no interest in following those laws. And those dark forces will do everything in their power to bend the laws and find any loopholes possible, because they're not good. Remember, they're bad. They don't want to follow the laws. One such loophole is to trick a person to willingly agree to a negative vow rather than forcing a negative soul contract upon them. They will trick them into agreeing to a negative vow. The negative forces really play a dirty game. On the contrary, the benevolent beings in our cosmos seem to follow the legal codes to a T. So I'm going to repeat that again. So where the dark forces are trying every which way to find loopholes and break laws, because they don't care about laws. They're going to try to find ways around it. But on the contrary, the benevolent beings in our cosmos seem to follow the legal codes to a T, making sure that they do not impose upon a person's consent or act against a person's soul contracts. And as you may have noticed, the positive forces do not always intervene or provide assistance, even when it is requested. These things inadvertently give the dark forces a huge upper hand. Now, on the rest of page 189, I do give some solutions to this that you can read, 189 and 190. I'm not going to read the whole book to you, but that's one little thread of thought that's talking about cosmic laws. And so one of the things that I did notice when I was really wrestling with this question of why does God, Goddess, universe allow these things to happen? And I would notice client session after client session after client session, when I would do psychic readings and look at what was happening behind the scenes of these entity or psychic attack issues, I would see again and again that the dark entities would find loopholes, and that there actually are certain cosmic laws, but these dark forces would find tricky ways around it. For example, they would trick someone into agreeing to something that they wouldn't normally agree to. And that seems unfair. So why does God even allow that, right? Well, we're going to go on a different track in just a second, but I want to read your comments. And like I said, we don't have the ultimate answers here, but just kind of getting the wheels turning. Jamie L says, victim blaming is very common. It's disheartening. And Laura is like, yep, I agree with that. Carrie says she totally agrees. Laura says, like politicians. Yeah. How is it that they even have any access to us anyway? Yeah. So that leads me on to the next track that I'm going to go on. And you know that I'm really serious when I'm going to get a drink of water, because I got to like get ready for the next part. Okay. So this next track of thought, I'm going to broaden our question. I'm going to broaden our question, and then I'm going to narrow it down again. Broadening our question, why are any bad things allowed to happen at all? Like genocide and children starving and, child trafficking and like all of the truly horrible things that have happened over the course of humanity. And that's a huge existential question. Like, why are all these bad things allowed to happen? Why is suffering allowed to happen? And now some people in the group, as we were having a discussion in the group, some people had mentioned like, well, it's because humankind has free will and we are the ones that are making these decisions to, not feed the hungry and engage in wars. And okay, let's say that that is true. But then what about natural disasters that kill thousands, if not multiple thousands of people? What about like any of the acts of Mother Nature that harm people? What about entities that are harming people, like torturing people? There are people who've been tortured by entities and dark forces. And that's not caused by humans' free will. That's caused by other forces. Okay. So the whole idea that it's humans' free will is the reason why bad things happen on the planet. Even if that's somewhat true, it doesn't really answer the whole thing. So these bad things, even like on a personal level, serious illness. There are people that go through daily personal suffering or emotional suffering, death of a loved one, people who've gone through a terrible event or a crime, have been the victim of a crime. Events that happen to the collective, as I already mentioned, like genocide, war, mass starvation, natural disasters, situations caused by humans, but also situations caused by Mother Nature, situations caused by fate, apparent fate, situations caused by negative spiritual beings. There are all these negative things as well as positive things that happen in our reality. Of course, we need to remember it's not all bad. We have positive things, but it's a mixture. It's not all good. There are some truly awful things. For a lot of us, depending on what religious tradition we may have been raised in, we may have been taught that we as humans are the superior beings and that we are especially beloved by God, that God loves us and that we are now in charge of the whole planet and all the animals, and we are, that humans are made in the image of God. And because of that, I think it's this kind of like underlying belief that we are more special than the rest of the beings in this reality, because our religion has taught us that from the beginning. And because we believe that we're more special, we think that we should be exempt from the bad stuff. And that might sound, I don't know if that would be triggering for some of you, and I apologize if it is, but we're here to question our beliefs, right? So I personally don't take it as an insult or a diminishment to understand that we as humans are actually not superior. We are part of the system of nature. We are nature. A lot of people talk about, like I want to go outside and connect with nature, or I want to go to the woods and connect with nature. But you already are nature. You are as much nature as the bird outside, as the tree. It's just this mental perception that we are separate beings. But if we can imagine that we're actually part of this whole system, this natural system. So knowing that we are simply part of the system, why are mosquitoes allowed to exist and feed off of people and animals? Why is that allowed to happen? It's annoying, right? And it makes your legs itch and your arms itch, and you might even have an allergic reaction. Why are bees allowed to sting people? And some people die from a bee sting. Why do wildfires happen and burn some people's houses down and kill thousands and thousands of animals? Why does a tsunami happen and wash away thousands of people and animals and plants and insects and birds? Why are pathogens, diseases, and parasites allowed to exist? In my opinion, I see pathogens, diseases, and parasites are very similar to entities that attach to people and feed off of them. So do you kind of see the point that I'm getting at? That if we were to see ourselves as part of this natural system, and to let go of this like over personalization of like God is supposed to save us, but not the animals, right? Or not the other beings, but we're supposed to be protected. And I just see us as part of a system. And that when I think about how mosquitoes exist within this system and parasitic entities exist within this system as well, that could be a tough pill to swallow. And I don't need you to agree with me or believe what I'm saying. And I also think that my ideas are going to continue, my own ideas for myself are going to continue to evolve, and they have over the years. This is where I've come to over the years, where I used to really mentally suffer and wonder, and I still get upset about it. Like, why are these things allowed to happen? I still get down about it. But once I started to realize this is part of a system and it's not personal. It's not personal. It's not personal any more than mosquitoes landing on you is personal. It's like these mosquitoes are doing what they do. The entities are doing what they do. That's one way of looking at it. Another truth is also that it's terrible what negative entities are doing. It's terrible that demonic entities and jinn and evil spirits are even allowed to exist on our plane. It's horrible. That's another truth. But we have this truth that mosquitoes exist, demons exist, it all exists. And it's not personal. Now, on another level, it may be personal. Maybe there's something that's been like an entity that's been following you through the generation, through your ancestral line. That sure feels personal. But I guess what I'm getting at is there are a lot of aspects of our existence where there are multiple truths at the same time. So, for example, something could, on one level, psychic protection issue could be very personal. There's somebody who was mad at you and they sent black magic your way. That's personal. They did it on purpose. They wanted to hurt you. Okay. But then when we kind of broaden, like step back, and like, if you imagine you're on the planet right now, but then you like come away from the planet and then the planet is just a speck, you see that it's not personal. Like, it's personal when you're up close, when you're looking at the bigger picture, it's not personal. This is about a bigger system. So I just have one of those brains that is able to hold opposite beliefs at the same time. So I don't know if that's comfortable for any of you, but I still feel upset about these things happening in our reality. And I also know that we are part of a system and mosquitoes exist, pathogens exist, and negative entities exist. So I want to kind of, before I read your comments, I want to go to a narrower subject, and that is when we personally are experiencing spiritual warfare, and entity interference or negative energy or something like that, and we call upon our spiritual source for help, whether it's Archangel Michael, whether it's Allah, whether it's like the prayers that you're praying from your religious tradition or your spiritual tradition, and you call upon that assistance and the help doesn't come. That's not easy. But if you think back on all the different events in your life, can you recall times when the assistance did come? There were times when there was intervention. So what I've noticed is that there are times when there is no intervention, there's no help, or it seems like there's no help. Maybe there is help and you're just not seeing it. But there are times when there is no help, and there are other times when something miraculous happens or someone shows up to help. And I'll give an example. This was not a spiritual warfare situation, but this was clearly, there were two different times when I was a teenager when I think my life was saved from, I don't know if it was angelic forces or something else. I was being a stupid teenager and I was speeding in my car by myself. And I was on like a residential road going faster than I should. And all of a sudden, something lifted my foot off of the gas and pressed my foot down. It was like an unseen force moved my foot from the gas to the brake. And I noticed it at the time. I was like, I did not do that. And I came to a stop right as there was an intersection that I hadn't noticed, that didn't have a stop sign or a stoplight. And right as I came to a stop, another vehicle like sped through, like whizzed by. So if I had not stopped, I would have been T-boned by that vehicle. I know many people have stories of times when they were saved from what could have been a horrible situation. There was another time when I was at a city park with friends after dark, and we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just running around and being silly teenagers. And I did not know that there was a ravine. And I was running and running and running. And all of a sudden, something like just pulled me back and stopped me from running. And I looked down and there was the ravine that I didn't know was there. There was, when I was a teenager, was when I started to really experience the most noticeable aspects of spiritual warfare. So it started happening when I was pretty young. Actually, when I was a baby, but it was more obvious when I was a teenager. And there was a situation that I write about in my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light, where I came home from work at the frozen yogurt shop. Do you guys remember TCBY yogurt? And I came home from work. My parents were asleep. The house was dark. I came up the stairs to go to my bedroom, and there was a negative entity standing there in the hallway. And I was Catholic at the time, and I had a very strong devotion to Mary. And I put my rosary over my neck, around my neck, and I started praying and praying and asking for her assistance. And there, just long story short, there definitely was assistance that came my way. And yet there were plenty of other instances that came later when negative spiritual situations were allowed to happen. And I think there's two reasons. One is the fact that sometimes we are supposed to go through difficult things. And I'm not one of those people that just throws those sprinkles onto a shit sandwich and says, oh, you were supposed to go through this for your learning. I hate that. I hate it when people do that. However, sometimes it is true that, like, We are, like, for example, if I hadn't gone through the major spiritual warfare in 2016, I wouldn't be doing this work. So there was a reason why that wasn't kept from me. It was allowed to happen. That's one reason why things are allowed to happen and the intervention doesn't happen. But sometimes intervention doesn't happen because of that cosmic law thing that I was talking about, where the forces, the positive forces, are trying to not intrude upon our free will, and yet the negative forces are coming in and mucking things up. So that's some of my thoughts on that, and I want to see what your chat is, what your chat comments are. So again, I know this is not an easy subject. Whatever I've said, take whatever resonates, put the rest on the shelf. And you know, my hope is with any subject that we talk about, that you can just simply gain clarity on what you believe, right? So even if it's some ideas that I shared that you very much disagree with, hopefully you've gained more clarity in what you now believe. And just remember, your beliefs might continue to evolve as you work through this. And let me go back and see. We got a lot of comments. Going back to when we were talking about the broader subject of why are these just terrible things in general allowed to happen? Oh, great, very important comment that Jamie has left. One way the darkness slips in is through childhood trauma. Traumatic situations leave an open door for dark force entities to slip right in under false authority. Yes, so any kind of trauma, whether it's childhood, whether it's emotional, physical trauma, an accident, adulthood, dark forces of any kind are opportunistic. Remember, they're the bad guys. So they don't play fair. And if someone has vulnerabilities in their energy field, then the dark forces take advantage of that, unfortunately. Okay. Jamie L says, this is such a deep question, the nature of good and evil, age-old question. And some people feel betrayed by God by this. Yeah, my whole, yeah, it was hard for me, for sure. I was like, who's in charge anyway? So there are a lot of people who feel betrayed. And even if they've lost, like if their family has been killed in a house fire or a car accident, it's very common for a person to feel betrayed by God because of this idea of like, why was that allowed to happen? And that seems like a very natural response to have. And the same thing with the dark forces interference. It's not easy, and there's a lot of healing that needs to be done. Carrie says, all things I've wondered and wrestled with since I was old enough to reason. Jamie L says, there is one theory called soul age theory. Old souls, young souls, etc. And they believe that infant souls cause the most suffering because they lack wisdom, because they are not in touch with their true natures or soul, God, creator. Older souls are more enlightened and thus act and speak from wisdom, truth, and love than the younger souls that need to learn more on this plane. And through each incarnation, they learn the lessons they need to learn. Of course, dark forces prevent the evolution and liberation of soul from form to prevent us from becoming one to source. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to give people a lot of food for thought. It does help to explain why there are a lot of humans doing bad things on the planet, but there are also other sources that are doing the bad things, not just humans, but that does help shed some light onto part of it. And continuing with that, and through the lifetime, the soul becomes more refined while fighting the spiritual battle back to heaven, source, God, goddess. Yeah, and that also brings up another idea that, and I talk about soul contracts in the Psychic Attack Sourcebook. There's a whole section on that. There's the idea that even if our personality self isn't choosing these horrible situations, that perhaps before we were born, we chose particular soul contracts that included elements of adversity. And the reason why I bring that up is because this wording that Jamie L says really connected me mentally with that he says, through the lifetime, the soul becomes more refined while fighting the spiritual battle back to heaven, source, God, goddess. One way that our soul can deepen is through adversity. But we don't need to, I don't think that we need to cling to having adversity as a way to deepen our soul or to grow, because we can deepen and expand and wisen our soul through love and through joy and through play and not through adversity. I do think that we sometimes do choose adverse life circumstances as our soul agreement. But other times I think that people are tricked into it by dark forces. And if you're interested in that, there's a chapter, what is it? Chapter 8, Spiritual Targeting Through Ancestry and Soul Contracts. You might be interested in that section in the Psychic Attack Sourcebook. Jamie L says, maybe this one is legit explanation for why we suffer and the process and also the battle with dark forces. Very good question, Jamie L. Was there always evil or dark entities in existence? That's a good question. Since I do not share the mind of God, I do not know, but I have a nerd brain for all things spiritual, and I'm going to be pondering that. And I do feel that negative entities have existed for a very long time. It feels very old to me. But if they've existed for all of eternity, I'm not sure about that. Catherine says, every bit of suffering to the vulnerable feels personal. I agree with that. And it is personal. It feels personal. Being an extreme empath, an HSP, highly sensitive person, it is so painful. And I can add to that and say that those of us who've gone through extreme health circumstances with very severe physical pain and suffering, it sure as heck feels like, it feels personal. It's like personal torture. So I want to emphasize that if someone is going through a very difficult situation, whether it's psychic attack, whether it's difficult health issues, whether it's some other terrible, painful event, telling them that it's not personal is the last thing that you should say. And I can speak from experience that when we're in extreme pain and someone says, it's like a mosquito, it's not personal, it is the worst thing to say, and it lacks empathy. So just remember that, that even though we're having this existential discussion right now. This is an existential discussion, but when it comes down to real life suffering, we need to remember to have empathy. So thank you for helping bring that up to light. Jamie L says, I'm just wondering how this all began, that we have to deal with this stuff. Yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Okay, I'm just going to keep going through our comments. And Jamie L says, abuse is a huge doorway where we become more vulnerable to dark forces. Absolutely. Jamie says, I totally agree with this content. I have had several divine interventions in my life, and then there have been many dark forces attacks that were permitted. This is an interesting topic. Yeah, so I'm hoping that everyone will see it as interesting and mind stimulating. And, if you're in a place where you're feeling traumatized, if you're in the middle of a spiritual trauma situation, it's possible that this video, it could be the right timing for this, or it could be that you watch and consider the rest of this later. Just depends on where you're at and what you're ready for. I know for myself, as well as many of you, I'm not currently in the thick of all of the major spiritual warfare. So once you're out of it, then you have the ability to look back with hindsight and wonder what the F happened and why was that allowed to happen. Jamie L says, yes, and bringing despair and so many emotions. Catherine, perhaps I'd like to change my mind about any pre-life agreements. Yeah, so you actually can, if you feel that you've made any negative soul contracts, there definitely is work that you can do to revoke those contracts. This is, I do touch on it in my book. We also go a lot into it into my Spiritual Empowerment Academy, my paid group. Let's see what else we've got. Carrie says, it does feel like all of the abuse and bad happening is bad enough. Then the straw that breaks the camel's back is wondering, why, God? Yeah, it is heartbreaking. It's hard. Like you can't trust anyone, even God. I think that God, Goddess, Universe, Creator, I think it's only natural for us to see that figure as a parent figure who should protect us. And so it definitely, I think, you probably agree, that it creates a definite feeling of existential crisis when the being that you thought was supposed to protect you doesn't seem to have protected you. Like maybe there was protection behind the scenes and you didn't know it, but it seems like you weren't protected. And that can be very, upsetting, right? To say the least. Oh, great, Laura. Laura says, Paul Levy, Levy, in his book, Dispelling Wetiko, says, if this mind virus didn't exist, we would have to create it. So for those who want to go down an existential rabbit hole, Paul Levy's book, Dispelling Wetiko, is a really good book. And it's Dispelling Wetiko, Wetiko. It's what I call the mind virus. So you might find that interesting. It's kind of like another side tangent to what we're talking about. Carrie says, it feels like a God is like a parent that's safe and good sometimes, but abandons you at others. Yeah, it can feel that way. So I'm going to get a drink here. Do we have any other comments or questions? We're basically like opening up this Pandora's box, or this box of, upsetting things that don't have an absolute answer. And then it's up to you to ponder this some more. Let me get a drink. So I saw a couple more comments come through. Then I'm going to give a few, hopefully comforting ideas. Yeah. Oh, Jamie L says, someone once said that it's not that God created us in his or her image, but that we created God or goddess in our image. Basically, we are misunderstanding what the higher power truly is by our own projections. That is interesting food for thought. So I always like to, even if we've talked about a difficult topic, I always like to give some kind of comfort or tips or advice. And I think what I'm going to just say at this point is, even though assistance doesn't always come every time, or it doesn't seem to come through every time, because I think there are times when there is spiritual support and we don't realize it. I think there are plenty of times when a spiritual warfare attack would have been so much worse than it actually was. But because we're not seeing clearly on that plane, we don't know that. But I think even though the help doesn't always come to the amount that we need it or want it, the help doesn't always come. I still believe in prayer. I believe in daily prayer. I believe in asking for help. I believe in connecting with our spiritual team, our spiritual source. However you perceive the divine to be, God, goddess, universe, creator, or if you like to work with other allies, Archangel Michael, guardian angels, or what have you. I personally feel that I'd like to encourage you to still keep calling on those beings, because one thing that I have observed, this idea of free will, this belief that our free will can't be imposed upon, one of the things that comes through again and again is that if we don't ask for help at all, a lot of times it doesn't come. That there are many messages that have come through, spiritual messages that have come through that have said that they need for us to ask for help, to ask for what we need, because otherwise they won't impose on our free will by just intervening without being asked for help. So this is why every day I still do pray. I pray. I think, in my observation, even though there are still some negative things that are allowed to happen, I believe the fact that I pray every day and I have a steady relationship with my allies, and that relationship is strengthened because of that daily connection, I personally see more help coming through from the spiritual realm than I did before, when I first started to go through spiritual warfare issues, and I didn't have these relationships developed with my allies, with my spiritual allies. And I mentioned this in, I think, the Psychic Attack Sourcebook, maybe even Darkness Disguised as Light, the importance of connecting and developing a deeper relationship with our spiritual allies. Because if we don't do that, and we are in trouble, something bad is happening in our personal life or spiritually, It's the equivalent of calling up somebody you met for 5 seconds at a cocktail party that you happen to have their phone number. They hardly know you. It's 2:00 in the morning. Your car has broken down and you're like, hey, dude, can you help me? And they're like, who is this? I don't even know you, and like, maybe if they're a good person, they might be like, okay, well, I feel bad for you. I'll go ahead and help you. But they might just be like, dude, call AAA. Well, maybe you never signed up for AAA because you weren't prepared. So developing a relationship with your spiritual allies is equivalent to establishing relationships with your emergency support system friends. Those friends that you could call on if your car breaks down at 2 a.m. And if you don't have that, you've at least hopefully signed up for AAA service. And if you haven't done that, then you're kind of screwed. In the middle of the night, you're like hoping that some stranger will help you and that they're not an axe murderer, right? In the middle of nowhere on the highway. So I'm a big believer in, even though shitty stuff still happens, I still believe in working with our allies, with working with prayer, or whatever you want to call it, meditation, whatever word you want to use for connecting with the spiritual side. I think the more you've developed your relationship with that, whatever that is for you, the more likely and the more frequently the assistance will show up. So do I still have negative issues happen sometimes, especially because I'm in the position that I am, trying to help thousands of people on the planet with issues of dark forces? Do I ever get blasted? Sometimes there is some stuff that happens, but it's very minimal compared to what I used to deal with. And I spend 30 minutes every day. I happen to live in nature, so I go outside and I do whatever comes. It might be praying out loud and asking for support, I call in my ancestors, I call in my angels, I call in all of my allies, and I ask for support, protection, guidance. I might spend that time releasing trauma from my body so that I'm no longer an easy target. I might be drumming, I might be chanting, but I spend 30 minutes in the morning, if not other times of the day as well, to do that work. And that has made a huge difference in reducing the amount of spiritual warfare. Okay, so that's my spiel. Does anybody, let me see if we have any other comments, but I also want to open it up and see if anyone wants to talk. Okay. Kate says, sometimes as parents, we have to let kids go through the hard stuff to come out stronger on the other side, or to learn a life lesson. Maybe that is what God is doing. I do think that sometimes that is the case. And it makes me think of also the analogy of the butterfly, that when the pre-butterfly is a bunch of goo in the cocoon, and then it develops into a butterfly. If you try to help the butterfly get out of the cocoon, the butterfly will usually die, because breaking out of the cocoon, that struggle is actually what strengthens its wings. And I don't know where I read this, but that it's a scientific thing. It is a thing that's been observed in the natural world. And this is true also for trees. Trees will be much weaker in their root system if they don't have wind. Oh, I was listening to something the other day where they here in Arizona, southern Arizona, they have something called they used to have the biosphere 2. It was like this dome where they had this whole enclosed environment, natural environment. And one of the first things that they realized is the plants were having problems, and it's because there was no wind, and the trees and the plants needed wind in order to create that level of adversity in order to make them stronger. Does this mean that every horrific event is this like positive vibes thing? Like it's just to make you stronger. I don't think we should go into an all or nothing belief system about that, because sometimes like shitty stuff happens and it just sucks. But there are other times when there's a purpose, like we are being put through the fire to strengthen. And I do believe sometimes that's true. Does anybody want to chime in? It's definitely not required or expected, but I would just wanted to give the opportunity. Okay. I think if nobody wants to speak up, because I don't see anybody. All right. Oh, yes. Laura, I can't read your name unless I put my glasses on. Laura, I think you're unmuted. Yeah. Please go ahead and share. Thank you.
Well, it's just a little thing, but it's kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, when I lost my job, I was pretty upset, but I was sort of like, if I just stay positive and I don't go into that poverty mindset, you know, everything's going to be fine. And I was trying to love and light my way through it, and that failed me, and my prayer failed me, and I was like, you know, feeling pretty abandoned and feeling pretty low. And along the way, there has been so much grace. And when you're sort of in a poverty situation and you don't know how you're going to pay the rent or how you're going to pay the light bill or how you're going to get dog food, how you're going to get more rice, and just individual people show up out of nowhere and suddenly you've got dog food and you're like, oh, this is great. And it's a celebration. You're like, forget the lights. Right now I'm celebrating. I have dog food. This is amazing. I didn't know that was going to happen. And so there's been, it's very humbling, and there's been so many moments of grace. And so maybe, so it's kind of been an opportunity. Not that I want to be in that position, but it's, I'm just grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. It also makes me think of the fact that one of the things that I pray for every morning in my personal prayer is I pray for healing, I pray for protection, but I also pray for miracles and grace. I'll just repeat over and over again, I call in grace. I call in grace. And it's like, and grace is like, it's a little hard to define, but it's like this miraculous shift in energy where the heaviness and the struggle is lifted, and we're in this more expanded state. So let's see. I think we have a few more comments, and then I think we'll wrap it up here in a minute. Jamie L says, I do feel strongly that the experience of divine grace is proof that we are loved and being guided through this. I definitely believe that we are loved, which might seem contrary to what I said earlier about how it's not personal and the universe is like that we're simply part of a system of mosquitoes and pathogens and other things, and it's not personal, but yet it is personal. And I think many of us can recall experiences, whether it was through other human beings or spiritual experiences, where we definitely felt loved, like there was a force of love and support. And I think many of us can recall one or more times when we experienced that. And Laura says, it's like a field of grace. Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Jamie L says, I feel it is maybe that and help us know we are loved, cared about by higher power, no matter what. And Linda says we can pray for strength and courage. Absolutely. So my hope is that what we discussed today simply gave you food for thought, and that it will help you to find some of your own truth, whether that truth is totally opposite of what I said, or there are some parallels in your beliefs, whatever. I hope that what we've discussed today helps you to find some clarity and some truth. And there might be a little bit of discombobulation and discomfort that happens as you work through it. That's going to be normal. But I hope that as you come to whatever your truth is, that you also come to peace about it. And that's what I pray for all of us, that whatever we've gone through, that we can find peace, that we can find peace. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm so grateful for each one of you. And just a reminder that we do have a free Zoom class that is for members of our free Facebook group called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And that free Zoom class, which we're wrapping up right now, but the next one is in September, and it's always, I have to think for a second, it's always the first Tuesday of the month at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. So adjust to your time zone wherever you are living on the planet. And yes, even though I am going to be creating Maya's video vault, these replays, whenever we have a free class, the replays will always be available free for the members of our Facebook group for a while. I haven't decided. I'm thinking like a few days or a week, the replays will be available. So you'll have that perk. So do we have any questions or closing comments? Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to share, to like say goodbye. Jamie says, great group of peeps tonight. Happy full moon. Yes. So let's actually close out by, I did this in my class earlier. Let's close out by sharing in the chat with tonight's full moon, since that's a very activating energy. What do you intend to activate tonight, since it is a full moon? And the full moon is very supportive of activating energies. I'm going to share mine. I would like this full moon energy to activate peace, not just peace within myself, but peace throughout our whole planet and reality. Just peace, 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 just a field of peace. What do you want to activate? What do you pray or intend for this full moon to activate? Go ahead and share. I'm going to wait for your comments to come in, and then after I read those, we'll go ahead and close out. And Laura says, thank you, Maya. May grace hover over all of us. Jamie says, healing energy. Sharon, yes, healing on many levels. Victoria, protection. Yeah, I'll give a few more seconds for any other comments to come through. If you would like to work with me more deeply, you can check out my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And if you share your email address on there, I will send you some free gifts, including a quiz that helps you understand the different levels and severities of psychic attack. Laura says, the full moon is pregnant with potential. I intend to manifest resources and more dogs to take care of for pay. Linda, thank you, Maya, for tackling this difficult subject. I'm definitely still discombobulated and still praying for peace for myself and all of us, because I'm not sure at this point if I'll ever really understand. Kate says, my jars of water are out on my deck, ready to create moon water. Sally says, success with my online business as we're struggling financially. May it be so. Carrie, may divine healing, peace, protection be for me, my family, and all the planet. Jamie L., courage, clarity, and energy to manifest a better and more beautiful future for myself, leaving the pain of the past behind. And Carrie says, and financial blessings. Thank you all for the blessings that you have brought by gathering here today. And thank you to everyone who watches the replay, sending you many blessings and sending all my love. Until next time. Blessings, everybody.